Hello Internet, and welcome to the debut episode of Autistic Integrity! Feel free to insert your noisemaker of choice here. You know, kazoo, maracas, quacking ducks if you're that kind of guy, and I'm already off track. Alright, you should expect that to happen a reasonable amount of time, but then again, it is my show, so as I dictate the rails and can modify them at any point, I darn well please. I guess it's up to me to determine whether or not I'm on track. Now, in this vlog, webcast, or whatever else you might want to call it, I will be sharing as best I can the perspectives, experiences, and difficulties of one very specific autistic individual, that would be I, and through this attempt to help the public better understand the problems faced by the growing autistic community. Community is in massive sarcasm quotes, by the way. Oftentimes multiple autistic individuals don't get along so well, but that's another story. Also, I make it a point to point out the use of sarcasm because I have no clue what it actually sounds like or how I should go about replicating it. Again, that's another story. So, back on track. What is autism? Autism is the name given to the larger family or spectrum of mental disabilities generally affecting the social interactions of an individual. As it is a spectrum, there are multiple degrees of autisticness, if you want to call it that, and various intensities of those given degrees, much like there are multiple colors in a rainbow, which is also a spectrum, and then various saturations of those colors. My particular diagnosis is that of Asperger's syndrome, which occupies what they call a high-functioning niche on the autism spectrum. Niche. Nietzsche. How do you pronounce that word? I've lived all over the United States and other places, but that's, again, a different story. And everyone pronounces that word differently. Once more, here I am back off, sarcasm quotes, track. So, I'm gonna start a little bit with telling you about myself, just a bit. I was born 2 months premature. I was like 2.5 pounds at birth, so there's a good chance that you could have fit 2 of level 1 me into level 1 you. Because I actually managed to survive, I actually became the poster boy for a bit of the March of Dimes, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to helping those with extremely premature births. And I was actually the fixation of a documentary at one point, but that's another story. So, I have actually grown into being a human fairly well. I'm very tall, let's just leave it at that. So, alright, back to Asperger's syndrome, one of the most common, if not the most common, forms of high-functioning autism. Now, to give you a quick approximation of what you can expect from the usual Asperger's victim, sarcasm quotes, or maybe not sarcasm quotes, I don't know, I direct you to a character from the Big Bang Theory named Sheldon. Keep in mind that I've never actually watched the show, but no matter where I go, no matter what the circumstances, I can expect at least one person in a given new environment to compare me to Sheldon within an hour of arriving in that new environment. When I was taking driver's ed, for example, on the first day of class, the raising of my hand to answer a question was met with, "Yeah, Sheldon!" And I have a friend in Spanish class who, upon hearing me detail the fact that my personal role model is nosotros, because it never changes despite opinions of others or what the other cool sarcasm quotes pronouns are doing, responded with, "Have you watched The Big Bang Theory? Because I assume Sheldon was your role model." That guy's awesome, by the way. I'm sure I'll have another story about him sometime. Furthermore, many individuals in the field of working with people like me also respect the whole Sheldon equals Asperger's thing, so it's not just a ton of completely isolated incidents. In fact, I was planning on referring to myself as AI for Autistic Integrity, which is reference to something I'll get to in a future cast, but I think I might actually use the equal in syllable count Sheldon as my name. You like? You like. Alright, so there are many different theories on what autism actually is. Genetic, not genetic. It is a lack of something or a substitution for something. Can it be fully treated? Is it some kind of evolutionary step forwards or backwards? Blah, blah, blah. My personal theory is that it stems from the removal of instinct from the human brain, as this would explain not only the lack of social understanding and inability to interpret facial expressions, but also many of the impulsive/negligent actions autistes. I might have to call people so affected this from now on, because I'd certainly love it if people called me that over the afflicted. In fact, I actually showed a teacher of mine an Onion News video featuring Autistic report and was met with, "I would find this offensive if you weren't one of the afflicted." It doesn't really bother me, it's just funny, so really call me whatever you want within reason. This autisty, he doesn't really care. Oh, not caring, also a critical part of Asperger's. Now, that's just my rough guess as to what autism is, but let's move on to some of the more common and noticeable effects of the spectrum on individuals. One of the earliest and most obvious common side effects is an intense, overwhelming obsession with something, especially at a very young age. For many people, it's trains. So many people, in fact, that "I like trains" is apparently a thing. For me, it was aquatic mammals, whales and dolphins. Porpoises can go jump off a cliff. Well, to be fair, they'd be safe in the water at the bottom anyway. I was fanatically, blissfully into whales and dolphins, when the other children would be outside frolicking in the meadow and loving each other. I don't know. I'd be indoors, watching Discovery Channel documentaries on the subject over and over and over again, reading massive volumes about whales and dolphins, whales, dolphins, all the times. Many autistic children are gifted with an uncanny if somewhat fickle memory, and I was no exception. And this, by the way, is not just a hobby or even a life interest to the individual. It is a passion. For Pete's sake, upon being instructed by my parents to introduce myself, I'd usually find it much more appropriate and fascinating to respond with, "Did you know that the average testicular weight of a humpback whale, also known as Megaptera novanusuala, is 460 pounds, or 208.7 kilograms. Sorry, it's been a while since I used that, so I don't actually remember how to pronounce it correctly, but at that point I'd promptly be removed from the festivities, often by the ear, some equally painful corporeal handle. And even though I eventually outgrew my whale underpants and my obsession with whales, my intense fixation wouldn't go away. It would simply transfer from another item of interest to something else. When I was 5 or something along those lines, I transitioned from aquatic mammals to rescue heroes. Now, some people might see autistic interests as crippling over specialization, but look at it this way. We are very, very easy to buy gifts. After Rescue Heroes, it was Yu-Gi-Oh! And so on and so forth. Now, I'd like to give my input on what I feel is one of the most frequently misunderstood aspects of autism: incompatibility with facial expressions. Forget other forms of body language, by the way. Those aren't even up for discussion. Now, it's very possible that the nature of this handicap changes from individual to individual, but seeing as the overall outcome stays roughly the same, I'm going to continue anyways. Let's try this analogy. Suppose that I show you a constantly changing grid of numbers on a computer screen. Following this? Good, because I can't hear you respond. So this grid of numbers has a set number of squares, but the numbers in those squares change quite frequently. Now, I look at you and say, whenever you see a 4 next to a 3, that means the computer is happy, except for when it isn't. Wait, what? Oh, sure, you can see that there is a temporary 4 adjacent to a temporary 3, but the rules governing the system are so chaotic and irrational that it doesn't even matter. I can identify a smile on a human's face, but then it just becomes, oh, you see the person on this flashcard is smiling? Good, very good. Now, when someone is smiling, it means that they are happy, except for when it doesn't. A young Sheldon responds, wait, what on God's green earth is that supposed to mean? Oh, see, smiling is often good, but then there are awkward smiles that mean the person is uncomfortable and possibly quite perturbed at whatever's just been said. Oh, sure, that makes sense. Oh yeah, and sometimes a smile actually means that the person is angry but trying to hide it. Wait, who? What? Oh, and sometimes it means that the person is getting a perverse pleasure out of something, but you're too young to know anything about that. Wait, huh? Okay, that last one didn't actually happen, but it's that kind of thing, alright? I read a book once where the main character, himself afflicted with Asperger's, explained his frustration perfectly. He said something along the lines of, take eyebrows, for instance. Some people tell me that eyebrows mean a person is surprised, but then other people tell me that weird eyebrows mean someone is angry. And then sometimes equally raised eyebrows mean that they think someone is sexy, so I'm just going to ignore eyebrows. makes sense to me. That book was brilliant, it really was. But that's, you guessed it, another story. Now, I'm actually going to head off now, but know that I'm here to answer your questions about Asperger's and autism in general. Think of this video's comment section as a never-ending Ask Me Anything thread. I haven't worked out a schedule for episode release regularity yet, but I'll assess the popularity of this vlog and scale it accordingly. I'm just here to help you guys understand this as best I can. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll see me again on the next Autistic Integrity!